Welcome to another episode of the TF podcast where we talk about technology and finance. Usually revolves around Bitcoin, crypto, and blockchain. I'm excited for my next guest. His name is Justin Wu, excellent growth marketer. And I actually go to him for a lot of tips often on how I do some of my growth marketing. So with that, Justin, I'd love if you could introduce yourself to everybody.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Name is Justin Wu. I am the CEO and founder of Growthly. I do a lot of growth marketing for some blockchain companies and then also fintech. So focus on like the future of finance, whether it be fintech or blockchain as well. So yeah, it's all about building up community and content. And I always love what you do with TF Labs, TF Blockchain, and everything that you do, Jonathan. So happy to be on here.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I do, really do. Yeah, it's fun. It's been interesting, when you kind of go at things from that growth mindset and how do you break the mold, right? Instead of just doing like traditional what people might think of marketing, it's completely evolved. And, I love before we kind of get into the topics of the day, if you kind of just give a background of yourself overall, how did you get into growth marketing? What did you find interesting about it? How long have you been doing it?
Yeah, I really got into, I guess, internet marketing probably about at least 15 years ago. I started really young. And it all started off actually with me selling or trading a lot of my Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh cards, Magic cards. Growing up, this was kind of like from late grade school to early middle school, where I was just
Yeah.
like buying these cards, just trading with others, and I just started realizing that I could buy my own cards online through eBay, and that just kind of like ignited everything. Where I just started to figure out I could buy and sell stuff through the internet. So
Yeah.
what a crazy concept, right? So yeah, that kind of just like sparked my journey to learning how to kind of grow brands through internet marketing, content marketing, and I've jumped through kind of like various hoops from working from launching a SaaS products agency. Back then, when I first started out my early career, I just said yes to everything, for better for
Yeah.
worse,
Yeah.
and that forced me to put my money where the mouth is and just study and learn through essentially just cracking puzzles and solving problems, especially when there was no playbook they don't even teach internet marketing still that well in universities, right? So
Totally.
the only best way to learn was through experience and my intuition and learning from just using the internet at the early young age. So that's
Yeah.
kind of been my background.
And,
Um,
and like what you're saying too, right? Like it's a lot of testing, but then it also changes, right? The rules change consistently, whether that be like inside the platform itself or moving to a new platform or
mhm.
just like the mechanics you got to do, right?
Yeah, platforms comes and goes, and we've seen the trends. Obviously, things evolved from like Blogger all the way to like MySpace to YouTube, Instagram. Now it's like TikTok, and it's all the rage now. So it's the consumer consumption, the way that consumers or everyday users consume content and media is ever evolving. It's going to get into the point where eventually content's just going to be plugged into our brain or downloaded in our brain
Yeah.
or something. We're getting to that point where screens are getting bigger. It's eventually just going to go into our head face.
Just screens become
But
thoughts.
screen becomes thoughts at this point. But in the end of the day, every platform, whatever it is just the way I see it is I'm not necessarily married to a social network or platform. I just see it as a way to communicate and provide some sort of value to some sort of other user consuming that content digitally, right? So
Sure.
when it comes to the end of the day, after you kind of figure out what kind of you can create a lot of amazing content, then the platforms don't really matter as much as long as people are consuming it. Then just create content on those platforms to serve those people. I think that's what's all about.
Yeah. And it seems also like, dependent on the company or the person, or I guess better yet, the brand, whether that be a personal brand or the company brand, it probably also dictates, where those eyeballs should be.
Yeah, and I'll say it's actually mostly more like if your consumers are there,
Oh,
you
fair. Yeah.
might, yeah, it's just because there's some very outside of the box thinking, like even if there's like a platform like Reddit or TikTok or some other meme platform out there that isn't necessarily like fully related to your business, you still if their customers are potential customers are there, you can still enter that platform and create some really interesting and fun things for people on those networks too. It just depends on the context of how people are consuming and using these other platforms
Yeah.
as well too. So that's my thoughts on that.
No, yeah. I mean, it's interesting 'cause, I actually been paying a ton of attention to TikTok. We've been talking about that online too. Just because it's so interesting to me. What I find the most interesting about TikTok is the fact that the pieces of content are so quick, right? And
Hmm.
it's just these kind of quick viral aspects of it. So yeah, I think definitely important for brands to understand. Um, so, one of the main things I want to talk to you about, and why I was really excited to talk to you about this week is, there's the Bitcoin halving going on this week, and actually just happened today.
Yeah.
And it seemed like a really, really interesting marketing opportunity, right? And so, arguably, like I saw someone tweet about this, that the last halving had like 150 people talking about it on Twitter. Now there's thousands and bots and everything, right? And so there's brands and companies I think really use this event as a really interesting opportunity to build awareness, for Bitcoin,
Hmm.
but like really also for their own brands, right? Whether that be like a personal brand or company, whether that be like a media company or even like a product or tool. Curious, like kind of what your thoughts are, what you observed, and what you saw in that regard.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a moment in history for all of Bitcoin, and we got to actually see it live, especially for a lot of people that just recently even got into crypto, and I'd say even recent, being like even the past like 3 to 4 years, or even beyond that, that missed the previous happening.
Yeah,
So this is kind of like this is the first time that's happened to anybody, right? And at least to all the new people that hopped on board.
sure.
And it's been interesting. There's definitely a lot of people are just wanting to use it as a moment to either pump up the price or all other cryptos.
Yeah,
People are using it to generate content and conversations around that as well too. But I think that everybody has been going about it in a very different way. Uh, but in the essence of it, though, everybody is all trying to generate more awareness of kind of like what, especially now with like thinking about how the current economies are in the
totally.
world. It's kind of becoming a little bit more relevant on seeing the Fed's just unlimited printing versus
Yeah,
more scarcity through Bitcoin. So it's a very it's just I don't know, it's a very interesting phenomenon that happened today. um, to see how both other outsiders interact and think about it. At least for those that are still on the fence and doubted, got to learn a little bit more about what makes Bitcoin special versus the unlimited printing of the U.S. dollar too. So
for sure.
yeah, it's been it's been great so far.
Well, I think one of the things that was shown through the halving, is really like the social construct behind Bitcoin, right? So like, so what I mean by that is the social construct of its community and of its followers and those that pay attention. And there's just people that were in Bitcoin. That's all we could talk about, all we cared about, and when you think about how a company might operate, and obviously I know Bitcoin is not a company, and nor does it act like one, but that's the type of community or virality that a company like desperately wants and needs, right? Like, they want people to be talking about them, in that regard. And I think, for me, that's actually what gets me really encouraging about Bitcoin overall, is when you think about that is, that's hard to get rid of, right? And so like, even if price fluctuates dramatically, is like getting rid of a core group of people that have a belief system or kind of have a uh call it, they're like mavens of the group. I just, that seems like that's part of the construct that you would want in growth hacking. You know what I mean? I don't know what you
Uh,
think about that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, well, I mean, for especially for Bitcoin itself, it's it definitely gets people excited for the third halving in these moments. And obviously, there's been, I don't know the full list, but there's other coins that were kind of like built or structured like Bitcoin, also saw their own halvings too. for better or for worse.
Yeah.
Like I think it was like last year or so we had Litecoin happening. Then we also have Bitcoin, Bit Cash, Bitcoin
Bcash.
Bcash as well too. So it's been interesting to see how each of these or each of those groups have also capitalized on their own happenings, um, for better or for worse, to at least generate more awareness of their own
Yeah.
scarcity
Yeah.
at this point. But I think everybody else is building their own project, and companies are kind of like using these events um, to still kind of push and prop up and generate more awareness for Bitcoin. Bitcoin leads the whole market
Yeah.
still, and I think that that creates and continues the momentum to create a healthy kind of like blockchain and crypto industry as a whole, to kind of just get people to continue thinking about some alternatives outside of their normal fiat and gold and other alternative assets or equities.
Sure. Totally.
So too.
Totally. When you think about like how Bitcoin, the halving was covered with, there's different news outlets like Cointelegraph and CoinDesk, had streams. Bitcoin Magazine had a stream. There's some individuals that say, hey, let's do these live streams, or different companies, right? Like, hey, like,
Hmm.
buy Bitcoin here because of having, as that excuse. It kind of makes me think of like a holiday or like a Super Bowl, in the sense of like, hey, like there's this event that's going on that we're all aware of. Let me use this event as an opportunity to also promote my brand and my person. um, I love if you could kind
Yeah.
of touch on like what you think about that, like in regards from a growth hacking perspective. Like, is that something that we see often, even outside of crypto, or in like, were some of those, what would you think of some of those tactics? What would you have maybe done differently, or what are your thoughts there?
Definitely. It is equivalent to, in terms of like how much attention and a big event would be. Like this was like kind of our Super Bowl type
Hmm.
of a style of event, and that only happens only a few more times too.
Yeah, I
So
guess it's like the World Cup, right? Because it's every, like, well, it's been about every 4 years or so, roughly.
yeah, yeah, or the Olympics. And
There
so
you go.
it's at a perfect time because it's like that's when search was exploding, and obviously the price was, pumping, a few days ago, or like the past week, and so it just got a lot of mass awareness and attention again, and people wanted to kind of be the thought leader of the space, but also to turn it into kind of this community and rallying event.
Hmm.
So I saw a lot of people create like live streams and countdowns, share their thoughts about it as well too. So there's been a lot of good content that was created about that, about the happening, and I think that yeah, the most successful ones have turned it into kind of like a week long like countdown event or
Hmm.
multiple events that just involved others to kind of like share their thoughts of where Bitcoin is today, and why they're excited still uh, about the future of it as well too. So yeah, it's like community events, obviously online events. A lot of people did countdowns. Some people did giveaways and sharing, obviously just to share more their own excitement about Bitcoin happening. And then just a lot of speculation too. People don't know what's really going to go on, and people just still love to like just ride off that hype, for better for worse, right? You have people who are malicious that want to just pump the price
Sure.
up and dump, and others that are more hopeful and bullish. But I do think the whole market's manipulated one way or another. So it's always hard to like decipher what's going on in the noise, and it's easy for us to get easily excited by the rush of the happening.
Yeah.
But I think of it as a more like a long-term scope and some sort of new baseline where it doesn't necessarily make sense to mine for less, but it could happen still because of
Yeah.
the control of some of the big miners have, and they can potentially bleed out their competitors. But at least it puts us into a more higher baseline where we won't see miners want to uh, burn and crash Bitcoin down to $100 if they uh, burn a lot of cash just trying to even just maintain and mine a Bitcoin as well too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what's interesting is, as Bitcoin becomes more and more, mainstream, um, and by no means is it mainstream yet, but it's definitely, I believe it will, is, thinking about how like some of these bigger companies might start thinking about um, Bitcoin, right? And so, you know, let's walk through a scenario. Like, let's say like, I don't know, I'm a bank, I'm just a regular bank, and I'm like, Justin, I want to start selling Bitcoin. What's kind of a process you would take them through of like how to think through, like, not, you don't have to educate, you don't assume they know everything, all the value prop of Bitcoin, assume like
Hmm.
they're already bought it. You don't have to teach them about Bitcoin. I'm just talking about from like a growth marketer's mindset. Like, what are kind of some things that you would take them through, or how would you have them think through it?
You're talking about like potentially like a big bank or like some other like large
Yeah.
company that's trying to get into crypto.
Yeah, and they're like, Justin, we want to hire you.
Oh yeah.
We want you to help us with like our messaging. Like, and the reason I'm asking this is because I think it's really interesting and important for people to understand kind of like how, um, regardless if we want to accept it or not, like, if there's mass adoption,
Yeah.
that's really what for the most part people are out for, unless you're like super, own your own keys wallet, like you pay,
Hmm.
offline transactions, that sort of thing, which I think those people will always probably have a leg up, because they know it's just like a very talented engineer. They'll have a leg up because they know how the thing works, to the T. But for
It,
everybody else that needs to get in, kind of just thinking about it from that angle.
yeah. So, and we might see that, sometime down the line as like you see more others like TD, Ameritrade, Goldman Sachs, all these other guys try to start onboarding more of their clients over
Yeah.
eventually, when like Backed and others fully go online, and launching. Because they have such a, more of these other fintechs, or even just not even fintech, these older financial institutions and banks, and that are trying to go out there. I think that the first and foremost thing is to just, because they're not necessarily going to like cater towards the crypto heavy or crypto
Right.
experts. They're going to have a lot more crypto newbies join on board, and it's going to be very important to just communicate what is the technology and what is going on in a simplified way, but still get into the depth of what makes this interesting and educational. And I think that that would be key, is to kind of be responsible in educating and properly educating their current customers and their current clients in this transition into this kind of new asset class, uh, or uh, or type in their case, to try to experiment and dabble into crypto. So I think that that'd be kind of key, is like education and simplifying it in a way that is both accurate, and I think that's one of the best ways, is to kind of like lower the barriers of entry for people that don't still haven't wrapped their heads around crypto and crypto and Bitcoin in general, or blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that video, visuals, guides, anything that can kind of really just describe what's going on, even if it's like fully like custodial or non-custodial. It depends on how they want to handle it. If they make it simple for the users, like Robinhood, or Cash App, where you can't really have too much of your access of your own crypto, but still they let people to kind of like dabble and enter into it for purchases, then I think that those are kind of like the leading examples right now for like Square, Cash App,
Yeah.
and SoFi. SoFi probably one of the newer, bigger ones that just got into the space to allow millennials to purchase crypto.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cash App's super interesting because their UI is so basic, but it's super clear, right? Like, it's super easy, it's super clear. Once you KYC, just about anybody can figure that out, how to get it.
Hmm.
And they make things available really quickly and so forth. And I like using Cash App as an example a lot, because of the fact that they actually were technically a traditional fintech, right? Like, they weren't
Yep.
founded as a crypto company, and then they saw a market opportunity to have this Bitcoin function, and a revenue opportunity to do it. And just this last a couple days ago or last week, they announced that I think they did $306 million
Wow.
in
Yeah.
in transactions, or sorry, in revenue as a result of it, which is, crazy. Like, and that was almost double what they did the
Uh,
previous month, right?
yeah. Which is huge. I think that honestly, like we're gonna see some of the biggest onboardings for mass adoption come from the more traditional fintechs that have a large customer base already as is, and they already have access to their identity, their
Mhm.
KYC, their banks. They have a lot of they follow a lot of the regulations. They also are very cash flow or well funded compared to some of the other like growing fintech or not fintech blockchain companies out there. And so if they built tools in a more heavily regulated environment as is, and they know how to play by the books and had all the banking relationships and even just like the UI UX experience of being able to just purchase or fractional shares or send money super quick, then their customers are going to be much more easier to just convert because they have that brand and trust, and the barrier to entry is super quick. Whether they jump again from like crypto to cash to sending it to their friends to sending it to a username without understanding keys, etc. Then yeah, Cash App deserves all that 300 mil plus that's been flowing into it. And I think that we'll continue to see more of those. And actually more excited to see more of those type of companies come out and actually give like Coinbase and others some real competition,
Yeah.
at least even for like the mass market side of things.
Sure, sure. I totally agree with what you're saying. And I totally, when you say that you think you're going to see a lot of these traditional, or sorry, fintech companies like taking on the crypto side of things, it's basically a why not opportunity for them, right? It's like, why not make something available that people want access to? And then if you already have your customer base, it's basically just an add-on or whatever, like that. Your customer acquisition cost is zero, on
Hmm.
that, right? Because you already have the customer. And so yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it makes a ton of sense for them. Especially some of these like easier fintechs like you're talking about, and when I say easy, I mean like easy UI, or
Yeah,
they're
easy to
kind of
use, easy to
easy to
purchase.
use. Yeah,
Yeah.
like the SoFi, the Robin Hoods, and so forth.
Yeah, because what it does then is you think about it compared to like the stock market or other assets out there. Crypto is 24/7. Crypto is fully well, at least a lot of the mainstream cryptos are very liquid and that people enter in, exit out. And if you think it was like with what Robinhood has done to the stock market in general, they call them Robinhood Bros, but the Robinhood Bros they enter in mass waves and leave in they're disrupting kind of like the market because when a stock crashes, like when Warren Buffett sells, then these all Robinhood just wants to pile in and buy. They think it's a good purchase, and there's so much buying power behind that now because it's so easy to just like buy a stock now and just like swipe up. They made it super fast, like in terms of the user experience to just move money. And I think that we're going to continue seeing kind of that trend where these super easy fintechs now, maybe they can't build their own Robinhood, but if you access to again like into the crypto market and you start making money through all these even just like small percent of these exchanges, that's a lot of revenue that's potentially running 24/7
Mhm.
as the crypto market's being fully speculative. A lot of the people there or could be indirectly trying to just like buy and sell like in a very like almost gambling way for better or for worse. But it allows people to generate some interesting revenue based off of the spreads and or markups that they do or fees
Yeah,
even as well
yeah, it's
too.
a total
So
margin and business opportunity there, right?
yeah.
Like, from everything from, I think, to that same point we were talking about, a lot of times, you probably heard this too, is, people say that the, traditional banks are actually very afraid of FANG, right? Like your Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, because of their opportunities to like incorporate their own banks and things like that.
Hmm.
And so, even though like, I guess, YouTube has been notorious for taking some videos down that are Bitcoin or crypto related, again, I think really what it comes down to is like, what's the margin opportunity or what's the business opportunity? And it really, if it's, if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. And so once
Yeah.
these companies start thinking about like how it makes dollars for them, I really see that it's, or because it technically, I guess you can argue that it does already, but like once they see that it can make dollars for them, it can create revenue for them. I think that's really where you start to see that. And ultimately, I think that payment layer is one of the bigger points of adoption overall. Is kind of
Oh,
where I see it.
100%. Because if you think about the layers of friction for people to even just like get into the crypto market is, they have to memorize people's addresses, you have to send it. Do you even trust where to buy it? Where are the fees? Like again, like Robinhood and Cash App try to like make it easier so it's not like crazy fees where Coinbase is just straight up like we're just trying to murder you on these fees. They like show you how much they just charge you for
Yeah,
those. Uh,
I've been
and so
disappointed in Coinbase lately.
I I honestly have been too, just because it's like I realize it's like just taking so much fees from both sides, from buying and selling, and just even just exchanging, like coins on there, and it's just like this is absurd. Like, uh, there is no profit spread, even if I would just do some simple moves
Yeah,
on there, and it's just like that's not a. I understand what they're doing, and then like they are like still the OGs and pioneers to heavily like make the experience easier in the space and for now until they get competitions, which I think they're slowly getting chipped away, but they're going to continue to capitalize on maximum revenue as possible so that they can
yeah,
be cash rich to move on and make their bigger moves, which they're always doing, as well too. And also too, comparatively, some against some of the other bigger institutions in fintechs, Coinbase is still not as big compared to some of them quite yet.
yeah,
So they're trying to like generate as much money as and stack as much money as possible. So, it's but that again, that presents more opportunities now with maybe somebody that is bigger, that wants to make less upfront fees, but they can try to just chip away from the user acquisition side. I think that leaves it open, and I hope to see the market and competition
yeah,
continuing to open up in that way as well
totally.
too.
So I have a growth hack for Coinbase. I'm gonna run it past you, see what you think.
Okay, yeah.
So I think if I'm Coinbase, first I would not, overcharge on fees and hold funds for 10 days.
Yeah.
But assuming I figured that part out, I would totally add stocks. I
Oh
would
yeah.
make it so
Yep.
that you could buy stocks within Coinbase. Like simple and easy. If I have to use a third party company to like make all this happen and just have my UI on it, so be it. But it seems like a total missed opportunity for them to do that, because going back to what we were talking in a moment ago, like just the user acquisition element of it, right? So it's like, hey, if I'm someone who already has a Coinbase account and maybe I'm someone that's not, trading on Binance or some of these more, uh, better, call it better experience or better, more trader friendly platforms,
Platforms. Yep.
um, then, there's probably a good chance that I do have some level of stock exposure. And so like, why not do it within, the Coinbase app?
Coinbase.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would fully agree. I think I don't know what all the barriers of entry to get to that point, but obviously Coinbase is still very well capitalized and generating a ton of money. So yeah, it would be interesting to see. Well, and that brings the point, right? Will we see more crypto companies transform and try to become the people that are trying to defeat in terms of fintech, and then the
Sure.
fintech companies are going to come, and I think it's going to happen one way or another. Both sides are going to try to enter and either meet or take over in some other
Totally.
way.
Well,
So
and what's interesting
yeah.
about that comment is that it brings up like the values argument, meaning like, what are the values of the company or the organization? So like, you could say like, hey, as an individual, we want to make sure that like we're 100% all about decentralization and so forth. And like, that's why I like Bitcoin. And like, for instance, that is one of the reasons I like Bitcoin. However, like when you start thinking from like the standpoint of a company as a corporation, if one of the main things that you do as a corporation is you try to make money, right? Like you find business opportunities, and sometimes you find business opportunities that maybe are different than what your original intent was overall. And so, yeah, it's like if assuming you don't have in your charter that like, we're only going to be decentralized forever, which most of these exchanges definitely don't feel that way because they trade cryptos that are, definitely centralized, right? So like,
Yep.
some of these, most of these exchanges can't use that as a point of friction. So yeah, it's like, why not, again, solely strictly from only the business opportunity here, is like, why not essentially
Engineer,
reverse
like,
innovate.
yeah.
you
Yeah,
know
reverse innovate or reverse engineer. Yeah, because I personally think that that is like the Trojan horse to get into the mass markets, is to speak the language and trading options that they're normally used to, and then adding that extra layer as well too. And that could be done through a partnership, or they want to do it themselves. So I think that that does present an opportunity, but it really depends on where Coinbase wants to go. Maybe Coinbase wants to be the biggest, and it's always Coinbase fighting against all these other exchanges too. So maybe they want to be the best crypto only type of options, and
right.
provide these more things like DeFi or crypto lending and other, or onboarding other assets as well too. And also too, we saw like, was it when Bitcoin crashed from like almost 10K down to like 8,300, there was just like either a sell order or some sort of like glitch on the Coinbase Pro or others that still collapse. So it's like maybe they're just so busy in so much technical debt to just maintain
Yeah,
the crypto side of things too. So
that's
which is
true.
just hard
Yeah.
as is. But who knows? It's like it's like saying, well, Robinhood should just build Coinbase, and obviously they're still,
Sure.
which it's a hard to build a Coinbase on it from the ground up too.
Yeah.
So it's just not
I've
maybe
actually never
there.
used the Bitcoin function in Robinhood, but is
Yeah,
it
so
is it no fee also?
no fee, but you can't transfer, you can't pull the crypto out. So you're just really kind of in a simulated environment on
Oh, got it.
Robinhood.
So if you pull it out, then you get charged a fee.
No, you can't. At least from, I have to double check again, but I don't. I from my like because I just tried. I was looking for Coinbase alternatives last week, just to like want to buy some in, and I about some on Robinhood because I had Robinhood Gold.
Yeah.
It was instant buying from there, and I just don't see an option to be able to even withdraw
Oh,
any
weird.
crypto. So so to me, what it means is just like it. It's not my keys. I don't really know if they even have that Ethereum, but it's
Yeah.
simulated in a sense. They're like an IOU. Obviously, I trust Robinhood in terms of their brand, and I think they're good for it. But they at least from my initial experience right now, there wasn't a way for me to withdraw. And I could be wrong. I need to jump a little bit deeper, but it wasn't as
Sure. No, all
obvious.
good. No
Um,
one will hold that against you if you
yeah.
can, so don't worry.
But you said like from Cash App, right? And this is me just still like learning, because like I traditionally was like Coinbase heavy, and I am, and I was looking for more options, and I
Yeah.
was just like quickly like, oh, just like, was it super easy for me to buy Ethereum? Yeah, I was just like swiped up. They made it
Yeah.
look like cyberpunk ish type of logos and graphics, but yeah, it wasn't really apparent for me to sell and exit. And if I can't do that, then obviously it's just for me to like speculate and enter in and out, and that may be good enough for Robinhood for now,
Yeah.
because they don't want to deal, maybe deal again, like if they're not really dealing with the crypto and it's not a real crypto transaction, it'd be like super lightweight for them, and they owe me later, I guess. Or they're that transaction's like seamless in the background,
Sure.
um,
Sure.
which we've seen some like companies out there, and even like blockchain games and others now try to use that as a point of lowering the barrier to mass adoption, is taking the blockchain out of blockchain essentially, for better for worse, but doing it in a very simulated way. And if you do eventually want to have your own keys and access to NFTs and crypto, there's going to be a little bit more advanced panel a little bit later, but for now it's like they don't want to even give you that type of overhead, as long as you can still do what you want to do, and they owe you, or they assign you to a crypto on their back end, to redeem and cash out on their platform. I think that we're seeing more in that direction, especially with some blockchain games where they don't even want to talk about NFTs and give you access to your own wallets and keys.
Hmm. They just
Uh,
they just want it all to live in the game, basically.
all live in the game, and it might not even be written on chain immediately whenever you get the asset or game, right? They just might just hard write it into their database that you own some sort of key representation of this game or the asset, and then later on, if you want to convert it, or later, or they're just delaying it so that they don't, for whatever the speed of the ease of use for
Sure.
getting a game asset. You don't want to wait for confirmation times to get the asset.
Right.
There's different explanations of why they gaming is done in that way, but I think that we're potentially Robinhood or some other fintechs are doing that as well too. um,
Yeah, it's
to make
and
experience super fast.
totally. And it's interesting, right? Because when you're talking about from the gaming side of things, is to your point, is people don't necessarily care. Sorry, the average gamer is not going to care if it's blockchain,
Not at all, yeah.
crypto, whatever, unless they happen to be someone that's super into that, right? Like they want to make sure that they can play the game, they can have fun, there's a good experience, like that they can own the skin or whatever, that it's only theirs. So whatever the mechanism to make that happen, you know,
Yep.
just like they don't care. They don't care about how the sausage is made per se. They
No,
just
not
want to
at
make
all.
sure that they have a good hot dog.
Yeah. Yep.
um, yeah. So speaking on the gaming, I know you're pretty into that overall. Is that how you got into crypto? Is through gaming?
Yeah, indirectly.
Because
Well, I
I feel
mean,
like that's a pretty common thread for a lot of
it,
gamers.
it was because when I was, well, indirectly, because like when I first heard about Bitcoin, it was just this really creepy, weird guy that came to one of my meetups, my marketing meetups, and he's like, you know what, the US dollar's fake, blah blah blah. Federal Reserve is printing money, buy Bitcoin, and Bitcoin was like maybe like $20 or less at that time or whatever. And then we just
Yeah.
like, yo, you're crazy, like whatever, leave. And then it was just like Silk Road conversations. But yeah, kind of like my entry into the space more properly was when Litecoin and script mining came out to be, where you could mine not with ASICs and CPUs, processor mining, but with GPUs, graphics cards. And I'm a big gamer, and I happen to have a graphics card that I could run a quick mining application. And I was mining Litecoins and all the other like shit coins in 2013, 14, or not even that, like yeah, 13, 14 days, where it was easy to just mine, and that was my way to kind of get Bitcoin easily, because again, like Coinbase was just barely an option.
Yeah.
The delays for then was even more massive. There was
Yeah.
local Bitcoins, which was really fun and scary at the same time. So the easiest way for a lot of the, I guess, gamers out there was to just mine Litecoin or Dogecoin. Dogecoin was my biggest coin that I actually got in, because it was super easy, and I got a lot of Dogecoin from just using my graphics card. So yeah, it really kind of indirectly came through gaming because of the gaming hardware. And again, there wasn't a lot of access from having a bank account, or even gamers don't even have necessarily a bank account when they're young, playing games. But you had a graphics card that you could use, so it was a great, easy way to get in. And because we've already, from a gaming standpoint, like we've played World of Warcraft Gold, all these different skins and gaming assets, it just clicked super super well. And one other extra use case that I saw that really got me excited back then for crypto was people on Reddit, where, and even on Steam, the Steam marketplace and the video game marketplace, people were trading skins and assets in there for Dogecoin. Believe it
Hmm.
or not. And again, because everybody was able to have it through mining, and it was able to be able to convert, at least trade to Bitcoin. People were assigning a value to it to then use that to barter for in-game assets, and back to real world value to purchase other in-game assets as
Yeah.
well too. So
Yeah.
yeah, indirectly, it was because of some pseudo mix of crypto anarchy with gaming that got me into
Nice.
the whole
Nice.
space.
Love it.
That's my Bitcoin story.
I want to go back to the growth side of things, and kind of more from a personal brand and personal branding. So, I know you help a lot of people on that side of things as well. What are some tips that you have for folks overall when they start thinking about like what a personal brand means, and then relating it back more specifically about a personal brand, is then also like relating it back to their company without it being, I don't know, call it obvious.
Yeah, definitely. So there's different ways to go that people in this space have built their own personal brand. There is uh, I guess the thought leader route, where if you are, let's say, like a CEO of a D app or DeFi company or blockchain company, the best stance I personally have seen is again, just sharing your knowledge of what's going on in the space, even on the technology side, if you want to flex your tech chops as well too. I've seen some of the very more successful crypto CEOs just really talk about the technology and what they're doing in the space and how they're contributing, and constantly providing value in that way by just sharing kind of like how they're contributing to the space, instead of just trying to keep shilling very strong points of views. And we've seen some CEOs out there and other companies that they are throwing some very crazy ideas out there. Where like, oh, I'm a US killer or I'm an ETH killer, and like they're just making these like really like crazy claims,
Right.
and
It becomes unbelievable, basically.
becomes unbelievable. But it's also really cocky in a way, and it's like and you're just like you're trying to incite tribalism in a way, and you're just trying to like choose sides. And it's so early right now, and you're mostly likely wrong anyways. In
Yeah.
this space, I think we all, it's proven now, is like EOS did kill Ethereum, Tron didn't kill Ethereum, and like making these claims are just distasteful in my opinion. And so, the more that you are trying to just contribute to the space through education and talking about like your tech in the way that is in a positive life in terms of contribution in the space, I think is the way that I would frame it if you're like a founder or even part of an exec or team of a product, wallet, or exchange. Another route that I've seen very well is just more, again, like educational and community building space, similar to what you're doing, Jonathan, which is just kind of bringing other players in the space. Even if you have your own company with like TF Labs and others, um, you're not just making it about yourself. You're just providing values and bringing a lot of other perspectives in the space to kind of just share their knowledge and perspectives. And that is another great way to then just put yourself in the middle as a community builder, thought leader, and relationship builder uh, in the space. And I think that's like another great way to really contribute and build a personal brand as well.
Nice.
And then you got the bad and the wrong ones, where people are just going out and just making some crazy, like super like pump claims and just hyping things, or the Bitcoin bulls or super bull, or if you're like what's the Dr. Doom guy again?
Oh, Rabini,
Rabini, and then you're just like super bear man or pessimist. That's another way to build a brand too. You could or
Peter Schiff.
Peter Schiff talk.
So I think he's a genius, and I'll tell you why. Because he literally uses Bitcoin shit talking to build his follower base and his user base. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah.
Like, I wonder if someone's done an analysis on like the reach of his tweets when they're about Bitcoin versus the reach of his tweets when they're not. Like, I want someone to do that analysis, because I
Yeah.
don't know why it feels, or maybe I just only pay attention when he's shitting Bitcoin and not when he's talking about anything else. But
He wins in both ways, but they both Ruini and Schiff win both ways if you think about it, because
yeah, they do a
when
good job of being the bad guy and like getting attention. As like, it's really interesting, like the psychological warfare that they're able to do. Even though I totally disagree with what they say, I'm
yeah
fascinated by the way that they do it, because they're able to grab audience. It's kind of going back to that whole like, is any attention better than no attention, kind of like, even bad attention is good. I don't know. So
yeah. Well, and it's also too, it's like they, whenever crypto crashes, like
that's when you hear them.
yeah, then they go on offense, and then when it's the other way around, they're quiet, but they actually still get a lot of attention, because when the price pumps, people just meme them, tag them, like tweet at them, and their activity just skyrockets
Yeah.
as well too. Even and I definitely know Rabini from like a lot of people that have known him in the past too. Like he knows exactly what he's doing,
Yeah.
and he's not wrong with a lot of his claims, and he's a very smart guy too. So I
Sure.
don't think that he is. I mean, he knows exactly what he's doing, and he knows how to
He knows
control
he knows that he knows the
narrative.
game. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah, and people still, and all these other blockchain conferences before COVID love to have him on stage to debate Justin Lubin and all that. Like it just became like this like
yeah,
boxing match. Like people hate to see it, but they still love it at the same time.
right.
So
A
it's just
car wreck.
the same thing with like John McAfee still, and is relevant. It's like people, they become notorious in a way that their brand just blows up even more, and they never even had a crypto audience to begin with, right? So they're just only gaining audiences at this point, and
Totally.
they're supercharging their existing audiences too with them from the gold maximalists as well. So
Sure.
it's a win-win in my opinion, and
No,
that's
I
another
totally agree,
strategy.
and it's a total tactic that I think a lot of people use as a growth hack, and whether they know that they're doing a growth hack or not, it's like kind of
Mhm.
um,
And
people like to people like to follow the extremes, right? Like
yeah.
it's interesting. So sorry, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
And then the other perspective, then you have somebody like Pomp that's just like heavily on the Bitcoin optimism side as well too, and they're
Yeah,
like polar opposites as well, and they're both advocating in different ways and their own ways,
yeah,
and they both built and they all built a strong audience as well too. So
totally.
it's there's different ways to go about it. Obviously having a very strong opinion does kind of lead you into a little more thought leadership side of space. At least you have a position or stance to go on, and um, being both notorious as you can see could still have a positive growth effect on your brand as
Right,
well.
right. Yeah, Pomp's done a really great job building his personal brand, right? Like with his show and like his, I was actually paying attention today on the different streams. He had more people on his stream than Binance and Cointelegraph, right? He's an individual, but his personal brand had more on the YouTube's had more, which is I think that's really interesting from thinking about how one thinks about their personal brand overall.
Yeah, he just built that massive community, and I'm not saying all these others have a massive community too, but in terms of like having a very like hardcore following that consumes a lot of the content, and also too, Pomp has a very strong email list, and I keep saying from a marketing growth perspective, email is still king. Social is great and all, but email is where all the money's at, and
Yeah,
and Pomp probably has one of the if not the strongest email list in crypto game right now. That pays for his subscription too. So like you're talking about like the best
yeah,
um, followers that will come and follow them as well too. They have that they literally have that buy-in because they're paying to be part of that massive list, and that is I still think that's the strong one of the strongest channels out there that all these other crypto companies or brands out there aren't even fully utilizing. Everybody is so focused on their YouTube subscriber count and their numbers. Whereas Pomp was just crushing it both on the podcast side, which he just blew out of the water, but then it just comes back down to his email is still top notch. And same thing with like even like the block. The block has a strong email game. Their strong email newsletter combined with their website that makes them a very powerful force as well too.
yeah.
Um, Comparatively to somebody like a 50K subscriber YouTuber that it lives and dies based on the algorithm. They never built their own community asset except on the channel and platform itself. Whereas Pomp can go wherever he wants, whatever he touches, people will
He can just update his
follow.
list, basically. Yeah.
Exactly. And then he just starts growing and stacking chips at this point because then he could just like bring all his community and just grow in all directions. Whereas somebody's just stuck on a single platform. It's very interesting to study some of the more very successful top brands and communities out there because of that as well too. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
definitely
Let's
seeing
break that
growth.
down a little bit more if we could, like on the email list, right? So like it's interesting because I've definitely heard that. I've heard that from you before. And people think of email as being like this oldie moldy technology, right? Like that's like the first wave
Mm-hmm.
of digital marketing essentially is the email list. And so why is that? Like is it because when someone is committing to give you, and I'm assuming this is email lists that you're curating, right? You're not buying these lists, of
Yeah,
course. And
yeah,
so
yeah. You're
because
building
those
a brand.
people are willing to give you their email, that means they're willing to learn more about you, and then you're
Well,
hitting
that's
them with value, basically.
Yeah, it's multiple folds too, is because, well, first and foremost, if you look at some of the other big, there's these very big brands out there like Morning Brew, The Hustle, all these other, they're all like email based community and news platforms that have a very strong editorial team that summarizes and pretty much give you this like newspaper and full digest of like what's happening all in one quick summary page that there's no noise everywhere else, straight to your inbox, and you just get kind of usually in this case is like for example, Mike Dudas and the Block, they have some very strong opinions on there, and those that makes really great content, whether it's good or not, you know. And that's with like if you see some of the past other communities like TechCrunch and Michael Arrington, he built his community with strong opinions and a very quick summary, both emails and the website, that people can just kind of keep gravitating and consume news and content.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that the evolution of what we're seeing now is the email is making return, especially for more curated and summarized emails written in a way that is digestible and consumable in a more I guess millennial type of content format where there's like big headlines, and if you even see some of the headlines of the header, like the Block sends out, they tell you straight up kind of like what you can expect inside. They have like multiple headlines inside one headline
Hmm.
versus like a quick hook that's out there. So you know they're doing some very different tactics that you don't see otherwise. And um, the thing about emails is that whoever reads it, even if it's a small percentage, are going to be potentially very hooked in the message that you said, because again there's no noise on other social media platform. They can go and scan down, they know the expected formats in terms of the template of reading this like a newspaper again they're pulling out there. That just makes it super engaging and super useful. One other point again too is that again you see with the Block as well as Pump is they have a much more premium side to that, where they have a subscription and paid email newsletter digest, so that whoever is subscribing to it, like they're going to read it for sure because they're paying for it now at this point. And if you look at the
Yeah.
more traditional markets outside of like crypto, more like the traditional like people in the stock and trading, you know, like the more old school industries or dinosaur industries, they are consuming a lot of stuff still through email as well too. So it's a
Yeah.
medium that is just very well suited um, for financial and fintech news and summary, as well as quick digests. But still, like the data has shown that even for e-commerce, email is still king. Again, it just goes directly to your inbox. But there's other evolutions of that now that's going and growing, which is chat bots, as
Mm-hmm.
well as SMS text, or even like WhatsApp and Telegram bots that just delivers you the news into your DM inbox. And those are still seeing like crazy like open rates and click-through rates. Um, One other factor that makes emails more appealing is even if somebody doesn't really open the email, um, not every a lot of people don't even still unsubscribe from the emails. And so something like the Block or Pump others, like they can just keep pushing out a regular cadence, and they're just going to keep getting inside the inbox.
Yeah.
um, and honestly, like some of the more successful email marketing companies and brands out there have a high frequency and high cadence of emails that go out, um, because it's similar to, I see it as the same thing as social media. It's like you might not want to read that post based on the header, but you're not necessarily going to subscribe because you still want to keep up with what's trending and what's going on. And
Right. It's like
yeah.
it's a touch point almost, right? It's like like it might hit your inbox. You might not read that particular one, but it doesn't mean that you're not interested in them overall. And so when you are ready to consume it, um,
It's
you know,
there.
it's
Yeah.
there for you, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's actually interesting you say that, because I think about like Travel Zoo. That so the Travel Zoo, I subscribe to whatever their like top 20 deals, and it's probably my longest subscription. And I literally today was like, I think I'm gonna unsubscribe from this because I'm not traveling anytime soon. But I was like,
Yep.
no, like there might be a deal that is really
For
good
sure.
here that I want, right? Like I literally had that, and so it's just like, you know, in my inbox, and I haven't been reading it in a long time. but it's on multiple occasions, it's produced a ton of value for me. Like I remember one time I found a deal that was Seattle to London plus 3 nights hotel for $450.
Wow,
And
what a
so it's
deal.
like I'm consistently looking for that deal again or something of that equivalent. And like I also found once it was like round trip airfare from Seattle to Vietnam plus like all flight and hotel. Is like Vietnam and Bali, and it was like $700 or something like that. It was crazy. And so like those two times of immense value have led me to be
Just
loyal to
maintain.
receiving that, right? So it's like, yeah, if you think about like in that context, is like when you're producing emails, it's like, how do you produce that level of value that someone's willing to forgive the times that maybe it doesn't speak to them or whatever, you know?
Yeah, and then like if you look at some of the more successful emails in your inbox, like they are actually like I don't know the full cadence, but you should go take a look at it. Like some of them are hitting your inbox actually pretty frequently. And that's kind of like the game where they're just hitting you with like these different story. It's really just about these story points to keep you updated and out there. And again, like for like, I'm looking at one of my emails here from the block. It just says, as local governments in China adopt blockchain, commercial banks edge out competition from tech firms. So it's like, it's giving me that like a quick news update, what's happening in crypto China, I guess,
Yeah.
as well too. And they're
Would
using
you
the
do me a favor
headlines.
and forward that email to me just so I can look at what it looks like? I'm gonna
Yeah,
take
yeah.
take some tips.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll send it over to you as well too. So, and for those that that is kind of like watching our talk as well too. You can see from my like a quick screen share here.
Yeah.
Like this headline here is kind of like it's a it gives a lot what's going on. It's not this like crazy hook that is like trying to bait you. I mean,
Yeah.
in a way, it is by kind of being informative. But the way that what I find successful from something like the block here again is they have like super quick digestible stories. These are like big headline news, and you see it. They're not giving you like these crazy excerpts. It always links back to their website. That if you want to deep dive into this, sure you can go in, and then they're going to go to their feature story. But again, like there's only 3 paragraphs, and you get to read just like the hook and the excerpt of it to go to the full story. And again, there's just more. They just made it in a really quick, digestible way that I can
Yeah.
just go and scroll and see
Not like no
what's going
pictures
on.
either. Interesting.
No
Yeah.
pictures at all. Then if you want something that's more like super in depth down here, and this is like a little bit more of a podcasts. But whoever's hitting and reading down here, like they're going to be like much more hooked, right? Like they're already they went down this far into the page, and so these people who are going to be part of it are going to be the more like hardcore type of audiences that come through. In this case, there's the people who are listening to their podcasts as well.
Yeah.
So the way that they're structuring it is a very interesting way where it's just like, and if you click through again, it links back. This is an important point too, is that they're linking back to their site to kind of give you this value nuggets. But I guess they also have this like paywall here as well too. So
Yeah.
they have like 2 different types of emails that's going out. This is kind of like the preview email. They're just trying to hook me into paying, I guess. So we'll see. Well, this one's free too, but
What are your thoughts on like that type of content, right? Like the paywall type content
it
overall?
yeah
Does that just depend on your brand value or like your right?
yeah it just depends on your brand value, and it is what it is. I think that if you find value in the style and education that they write, they have to pay their own bills. They have to pay their own writers, right?
Yeah.
If you
You're still
um,
sharing your screen, by the way.
oh yeah so it's just like these media platforms and publications, it's really hard as is to make money. And
Sure.
um, if and for them to kind of continue to maintain their for the most part, hopefully their integrity, they don't want to resort to shilling and cheap money tactics, especially whenever times get rough or the crypto bear market or whatever it is. So it's a great way to support it. And if you love, let's say, the Block or Pump or these other brands, then there's a space for it as long as you have that brand buy-in from the company or people of the community that you serve.
Yeah.
So, I see where there are people that won't want to pay. Again, like I may not pay, but this is like what I showed previously was like the free version of it, and not everything is paywalled.
Sure.
They give a little, even some expert excerpts as well. But the idea with what they're going with, like the block, is that they might have some super advanced stories and editorials that that they spend a lot more time researching. And if I really like those type of stories and excerpts, then maybe I should pay. But it depends on what your appetite is. And especially if like you're a trader or institutional or somebody that's an executive that just wants to kind of keep up with industry news, and maybe you expense it, or it's just a little cost that you might
Yeah.
want to pay.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like exactly. You're trying to produce the content in a way that is in the format that your audience is willing to digest it the most. Going back to one of your original points.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So, and there's different ways to go about it. And the traders obviously will have like paid subscription newsletters because they're actively trying to get people earning money. If there's providing like very industry heavy news, then it's catering to like execs and institutional type of people just trying to get a pulse on like what's big things that are happening with big movements. And then that is their own audience as well that they're trying to cater to. So it really depends on how you want to position your brand and yourself. And I I'm not I think that, especially for like a lot of the healthy personal brands or even communities out there, is um even if you convert like a small mix of your people to like 5% or less to subscribe and be part of it, as long as you have like you're providing value to those people and you're getting some revenue, that helps you support and make great content in your community as well too. So I don't fault anybody that's trying to do it, unless they're doing it in a way that is just like straight up hardcore paywall, and they're just like all the links are just straight up hitting a paywall. And
Yeah.
that's just kind of like bad taste, in my
Sure.
opinion.
Yeah, like Business Insider. Just
Yeah.
kidding.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Don't even get started.
So,
I think Business Insider is like super aggressive on that. And
it's
um, yeah, unless you have that Wall Street Journal rep, which Business Insider doesn't, uh, you
right.
know, then it's whatever.
Yeah. No, it's funny because like they'll do like this like top 40 people or whatever, like 40 under 40, and like you click on it, it's like paywall. I'm not gonna pay money to see who the top 40
Yeah.
people are or
Yeah.
whatever.
So
Super.
finding a mix is always an interesting balance. And then yeah, so it really depends on what you want to do with it.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's awesome. Well, cool, man. I feel like this is something we could talk about for hours, but I want to leave you with the final question. As you know, and have heard me say, I've asked you before, like, what's a question that you want to ask our audience that they can think about as they go about their day, overall?
Let's see. Think of a good question. Oh yeah, I guess this is more. I guess this is on a question for kind of like mass adoption. And I think the question is, what has kind of turned you off about crypto throughout your own experience? Um, and I think that if we kind of ask those questions and think more about that, those are the kind of the problems that we need to solve. But also just like, what are the questions that even like, what are the obstacles that your sibling, your mom, and others might face when it comes to like purchasing crypto? And I think that having that realistic look and asking those questions and identifying these obstacles will help us kind of identify how we can get to the next millions of potential crypto users and crypto buyers.
Yeah,
Or you can flip the question saying, what are the current like old school financial apps or fintech apps out there that you personally like, and how can you kind of bring those experiences into crypto as well
yeah,
too? So that's the way that I like to kind of leave people thinking of. And that's the constant question that I personally ask every day is, how can we get more people into blockchain and crypto and Bitcoin in general? And the only way is to really lower that barrier and make the user experience seamless,
yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah, when you said that, you made me think of a question or final topic, so we can talk about this super quick. But is you know, it's it's okay to copy, right? Like meaning like if you find like a good marketing tactic, a good branding tactic that you see another company do, find the parts that work well for you and like bring it into yours. I don't know. That's my thought. It's like
Yeah,
there's so little
100%.
original thought in like how we do things. So copy what's good and like, build that into your brand or build that into your personal brand or whatever, right?
And to the last note is just both like if you look at the most successful companies and or successful apps or like again like Robinhood and Cash and all these other apps, what have they done very well to convince people to give their bank account information, to like get so much of their financial data, even Venmo, to have people transact, and all that's like super personal
Yeah.
data. Or another one is Dave, like the new neobank that's out there that has people like plugging in their financial information to kind of get the quick loans as well too. And it's okay to borrow the playbooks of these other companies and apply it to crypto, because crypto and the blockchain industry is so new still, and it's such a nascent industry, and we're still living in a bubble that was only catered towards some really tech heavy users in those experiences. So the
Totally.
more that we can borrow from these other apps, they spend so much money and research on R&D and even design, the better. And there should be a point where potentially like these financial apps and crypto apps will be indistinguishable, that because the experience is going to be kind of the same, in the way
Yeah.
that you could buy crypto as easy as like swiping up and then sending it out through a username or an email address super easily. And I think that we'll continue to get there, and yeah, we get to be pioneers in the space.
Yeah, totally, man.
So
Awesome. Well, Justin, what are some good ways that people can stay in touch with you or follow you?
yeah, you can just find me Justin Wu on Twitter or LinkedIn, or my handle is Hackapreneur. It's HACKAPRENEUR. It's a little long, but again, if you just type Justin Wu or Justin Wu Growth, growth with the LY at the very end of it, you should be able to reach out and find me. And always happy to chat outside of crypto too, just all about marketing and growth.
Awesome. Cool, man. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Likewise. Thanks again for
Everybody,
having me.
thank you for listening to another episode of the TF Podcast. Please make sure that you are subscribed on the channels that you're listening this to on the podcast, as well as our YouTube channel, and sign up for our email list, as Justin
Definitely.
said. We do send a couple emails a week with some interesting news and what's going on. If you like this, please do us a favor and fill in those stars. It goes a long way, and would appreciate if you could share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I can be found at JG Product on Twitter, or at TF Blockchain, or you can just email us at info@tflabs.io. Thanks so much, and we'll see you soon.